Hello, today we're going to talk about OpenVZ Virtuozzo containers. So there's a wiki page for comparison of platform virtualization software that contains other competitors to OpenVZ such as KVM, the parallels POX, Proxmox, QEMU, etc. And about OpenVZ, it says that it's a community project supported by the vendor, which was named as SWSoft, then Parallels Inc., then Virtuozzo Inc. And these columns are for the host OS and the guest OS. So host OS is the operating system that's installed on the hardware machine, such as a laptop or a desktop computer. So that requires to be Linux. And then the guest operating system, which is running in a virtual machine or a similar environment. So in an environment similar to a virtual machine, must use the same Linux kernel as the host OS. Okay, so the container, OpenVZ container, reuses the same, the container does not really contain a Linux kernel, and it reuses the same Linux kernel as the host OS. Okay. And even more, the host OS is mandated by OpenVZ because you need to run a special Linux kernel that contains out of 3 patches, and that's going to be the correct Linux kernel for the host OS and for the guest OS. Whereas the guest OS, the rest of the user land, in the guest OS, you have a choice of pre-made templates, such as Alma Linux 8 and 9, CentOS, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and their own offering, VZ Linux. Okay, from Virtuozzo. Okay, so let's look at the wiki page. So an operating system level virtualization similar to LXC in Linux, Linux containers, Solaris zones. Okay. So requires a modified Linux kernel, a container only sees its own processes. Such a screenshot looks like this. So this is the init PID1 of the host OS, whereas these are the PID1 of the guest 1, and this is the PID1 of guest 2. The templates come with a mail server, SSH, and Apache. Okay, so it's not a virtualization technology in the sense that it doesn't run virtual machines. It's not VMware, Zen, or KVM QEMU. It doesn't do hypervisor-based virtualization, doesn't do para-virtualization. But instead it's similar to a chroot or a Docker container. There's disk quotas, CPU % quotas, disk I/O, user quota. and was used primarily by hosters, HTTP, so web hosters, the vendor from which you buy your hosting for your company's website. Okay, so let's actually install a host operating system for OpenVZ, and inside let's start some OpenVZ containers. For that we go to their official webpage. Okay, says they have their own Linux distribution, VZ Linux, which is an alternative to CentOS. VPS is containers. Applications do not conflict. Better utilization of resources on a single physical server. You theoretically can have more OpenVZ containers running on a hardware machine. Then you can have virtual machines running on a hardware machine, because you don't need to reserve upfront RAM capacity for as you do for virtual machines when you run OpenVZ containers. Optimized for hosters. Okay, so half of OpenVZ or Virtuozzo is containers, but with using the similar tools or the same tools that you use to create containers, to list containers, to stop containers, to enter containers, etc. You can use to also manipulate and manage and create virtual machines in addition to containers. Okay. Where is the download? This button. Okay, so templates are similar to virtual machine templates. So they're images, hard disk images, and configuration templates. So it says that the hard disk should be, I don't know, 8 gigabytes in size, and inside of that image you have a choice of Linux distributions, and again there's no Linux kernel packages installed in the template. Okay, kernel means a special out of 3 patch downstream of the Linux kernel, and then user level tools, there's at least 3 of them: PRL, CTRL, and two more. Okay, Debian is not supported. Not sure why it says in here. The only thing that really works where are you? Is the just a second, where do I find this thing? Okay, so this is the correct directory. Download openvz.org/virtuoso/releases. And we have a choice of 7, 8, and 9, but then 8 was last released in 2021, so let's ignore that. And 9 is recent, 2 days ago, but this ISO I cannot use to install a virtual machine on my system because it fails to boot. So I'm left with just the version 7. And they're also marked, so 8.0 is marked as alpha, 9.0 is marked as alpha, and 7 is marked as RTM, release to manufacturing. Okay, there's only one CPU architecture possible, which is x86-64. And in here we have the ISO that we use in order to install the host operating system. So let's download that. It's this thing or this thing. So it's an ISO 1.6 gigabytes, and it's an operating system which is derived from Red Hat Enterprise Linux, the open source parts. So similar to CentOS 7, similar to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7, and to other similar distributions. Okay. So I have already downloaded the ISO file. Let's install inside QEMU VM Virt Manager this virtual machine. So we go new, ISO, forward, browse. Okay, OpenVZ ISO 7.0.19.ISO. The operating system is Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. So this thing, forward, let's give it a ton of RAM, 6. Let's make this 120 gigabytes. The name of the virtual machine and the name that I will use for the host OS will be OpenVZ 7. Customize. Okay, so BIOS, the best motherboard, CPUs with a correct topology, memory, boot options, Virtuozzo. This operating system, it's a sibling of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7, and still it supports Virtuozzo, has modern amenities such as systemd inside. It does Virtuozzo for hard disks, so for storage, and for network interface cards. We can just begin the installation. Okay, so this is the bootloader of the installer. Okay. So it's booting into the installer, which is Anaconda. GUI installer. We need to select the disk. Do I want to use it? Yes. And let's change the time zone. Done. Nothing else to select in here. Begin installation. Now it asks for a root password. Let's give it. I need to press done twice because it's too short. I try to always create a Linux user that's not the root user. Let's make this administrator, so a member of the wheel user group which can do sudo sudo. So administrator, make this administrator password. Done. Again, they tell us that they have a special Linux distribution Linux operating system that's also derived from Red Hat, which is called VZ Linux, and they have a commercial solution which is called Virtuozzo. VZ kernel. CRIU is used for moving a container from one hardware host OS to another hardware host OS. Okay. So let's go over some documentation while it's doing its things. So openvz.org, where are you? There's a repository on a Git repository with some documentation, but it was last edited in 2017. Parallels IP Holdings GmbH 2016. By the way, who is behind Virtuozzo? What's the company called? Fourth largest contributor to QEMU VM. They were also a contributor to LXC Linux containers. I still do not know the name of the company. It appears in LinkedIn as Virtuozzo with a 2 Z's. Okay. So installation guide. Fortunately, it runs in virtual machines. I'm not sure if the documentation is for this version, but Virtuozzo 7. Okay, we did all of this. Okay. Let's see if it finished. So it finished and says OpenVZ is now successfully installed and ready for you to use. I can press the reboot button, which I'm doing right now. Okay, let's look at the virtual machine. Should not have any CD-ROMs inserted. No, it does not. Boot options, just the VirtIO hard disk. Okay, and it booted. And we're at the login prompt. We do not know the IP address of this machine, so let's see if Virt Manager can tell us. So it's this thing. Let's try to not connect at all using Virtual Manager. So console, SSH, I created a user called administrator. Ctrl-Shift-V. The SSH server is running. Okay, kernel 3.10, which is the lineage for the kernel branch for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. Okay, what else do we need to do? Let's change the name of the operating system from localhost to something else. So let's become super user, sudo su. Okay, so now I'm a super user because that's what I selected in the Anaconda OS installer, to have the user administrator member of the wheel user group and be able to do. Okay, what's the name? Hostname CTL. How do we set a hostname? Set hostname. And the name should be OpenVZ 7. OpenVZ 7, correct? Okay. Let's copy the IP address. Where are you? Okay. So what operating system is this one? OS release, so it's Virtuozzo, like Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Fedora version 7. Can we update the system? DNF, no such thing. Yum, update. Okay, selects mirrors, and then we'll download the metadata, so the list of packages that are available in the package repositories. Okay, so it found some packages that can be updated. And it also wants to download a package with easy at the end, so Debian 10 easy. So easy are the packages that end with easy are templates that are used for creating OpenVZ containers. Okay, so since it's only 30K, let's actually install it. Okay. Bare metal virtualization solution includes containers and KVM-based virtual machines. Okay. easy templates can be used as templates for containers. Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7.3.10 kernel. Optimizes memory used by virtual machines, but we're not using virtual machines. Okay. User's guide. So there's a /vz directory, which contains in private the virtual hard disk. Maximum size of the virtual hard disk is 16 terabytes. I have seen 8 gigabytes for the virtual hard disk. Okay, there are templates. Virtual machines. We're not using virtual machines. Okay. So there was a OpenVZ wiki screen recordings. Just a second, let me get to that. Okay, so from the wiki of the OpenVZ project, there's the page installation. We've installed on bare metal, so it says that OpenVZ project builds its own Linux distribution with container virtualization. It is based on their own Linux distribution, custom kernel, OpenVZ management utilities. It is highly recommended to use OpenVZ containers with this Virtuozzo installation image. So we should definitely use this operating system as a host operating system. Okay. And there are some screencasts. So let's look at those. Full container lifecycle. Let's reboot the machine. Let's wait for the machine to start. Okay, let's connect again using SSH. And back to the screen recording. So it does prlctl create, then the name of the container, then it specifies that it wants inside of the container to be CentOS 6, and VM type CT means use a container, not a virtual machine. It takes a while to download the image, the template, which is actually a RPM package in their Linux distributions package repositories. So we can look at those. DNF. search easy, not DNF but yum. Okay, so RPM packages that end with -easy. So there's Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 and 8, Rocky Linux 8, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 12 and 15, their own Linux distribution VZ Linux 7, 8 and 9, Ubuntu 2204, 2004 and 1804, Debian 11, 10, CentOS 7 and 8, Alma Linux 8 and 9, and that's it. Okay, so these in here they specify CentOS 6, which does not exist anymore. The oldest CentOS is CentOS 7. Okay, so this command line definitely will not work. Okay, so they created a container which is not running yet, and that can be configured, started, entered, can be configured to start when the host OS starts. Now it has started the container. It can run commands inside of the container, prl lctl exec the name of the container and then the command to run. It can set the user, create a user inside of the container. It cannot SSH inside because it uses host only networking by default, and will use the alternative, which is bridged networking. Okay, so this is inside the container, this prompt. Control D or logout to exit the container. prl-ctl enter again. List -a lists all of the containers, very similar to the Docker command line. Stop stops the container, destroy destroys the container. And now if it lists the containers, that containers is not available anymore. Okay, so I have my own notes because host only networking did not work for me, and because the screen recordings are a bit older. Okay, so I've set the host name on the host OS to OpenVZ 7. I can see it in the prompt. Then I want to create a VM, but in order to create a VM I need to not a VM but a container. So it says VM type cd, which means container. And for that I need to know which templates are available. I know which templates are available because I went yum search easy. So I searched for all the packages that RPM packages that contain the string easy. But then I do not know which template is going to be used by default. And that's specified in a configuration file, which I don't know which one is. So VZ install Emacs -no x and mc. Yes. Okay, now I have Midnight Commander and Emacs, the text editor. vz.conf. Okay, so /vz is an important directory for Virtuozzo. There's vz-lock for lock directory. There's vz/template, there's vz/root, vz/private, and the default OS template is Alma Linux 8. Okay, a good choice. So this is in the family of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, not the last version of it, which is Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9, but the previous one, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. Okay. What else is specified in here? vz/vz/dump. Okay. Escape twice, F10. And now let's do something very similar to what this screen recording does, but we're not going to specify the name for the template to use, so it will use the default template, which is Alma Linux 8, which is okay. Okay. So let's look at my notes. It says, let's look at this command line. So it has a man page. PRL means parallels. CTL is a common suffix for command line executables. There's for systemd, there's system CTL, there's journal CTL, etc. Okay, so it says that the Parallels International in 2017 has changed into Virtuozzo International. There's also PRL server CTL. Okay. So this is one of the possible command lines that we can use to reset containers, to create containers, to stop containers, to post containers, to migrate containers from one host OS hardware, host OS to another. So when you create it, you can specify a template. You can specify if you want CT a container or VM a QEMU VM, style VM. Okay. Move creates snapshots. List -a to list all of the containers. Enter to enter a running container. Restore. Start and stop. Okay. So this is a shorter list of the possible command line parameters. Okay, let's start by listing everything, so list all. What did we just do? Nothing. We didn't yet create a container, so let's create one. So the command line is like this, PRLCTL. Then the verb is create. We want to create a new container. So we say VM type city, which means container. VM would mean virtual machine. We do not specify which template to use, so it uses the default template, and then my city is the name of the container that will be created. Okay, so Alma Linux 8 is not yet available on my machine, will need to be downloaded. It creates a cache. Okay, creates a virtual disk, installs packages. So this takes, I don't know, 2 minutes. Okay, so let's see what we will do. We create the virtual machine. We set the hostname of the virtual machine. We create a user which is named administrator with a password secret. We set the password of the user root to secret. And then we will use not host only networking, but bridged networking, which is the alternative. Okay. And after we finish configuring the internet connectivity inside of the container, we will be able to connect using SSH to the container. And from there, it's just Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 things. Okay, let's list the container, prlctl list A. It appears, it has a name, myCT, is of type, this column tct, which is container, has a global unique ID, status stopped. Okay, while it's stopped, let's set its hostname. So set can set various parameters for the container. So set can set VNC mode, VNC port, IO priority, IO limit, IOPS limit, rate, CPU units, so various quotas for the container, host name, DNS name server, DNS search domain. Okay, what else? Distribution name. Just a second. Okay, so we've set we're going to set the host name. It gives a warning that prlctl will be replaced with something else, and then it returns success. Okay, so let's set create a new user. Authentication tokens updated successfully. So it created a new user named administrator with a password secret. And now we set the password of the user. So if the user already exists, the user will not be created, which is the case for the user root, which already exists. So it only sets the password for the user root. But since inside of the container there was no such user named administrator, that was created, and then it set the password secret to the user administrator. Success again. Okay, now let's look at the networking issues. Okay. networking modes for one container or a virtual machine, but we're talking about containers now. We have two possible networking modes: host routed or bridged. Okay, let's look at host routed. I do not know how to read this image. I have no clue how to set up this part, so we'll skip to the bridged mode, which I understand what it does. So bridge mode, the physical server. So I have the OpenVZ Linux host OS installed. That contains one network interface card. Let's look at it. It's called ETH0. It doesn't have an IP address because there's a bridged BR0 on top of it. The correct IP address of the network interface card is this one, 192.168.122.239, because I know that this subnet is provided by the virtualization software that I use, by Word Manager. Okay. For host routed mode, there's this network interface card which is called VE net 0. Okay, and for bridged mode, there's BR0. What bridged mode is in other virtualization software, such as, for instance, Oracle VirtualBox, means that at the level of this network interface card of ETH0 of this IP address, inside of this same network, local area network, so inside of this subnet 192.168.122.1/24, so CIDR, new IP addresses will be used from this IP address range for the containers themselves. So in this case, I will be able from the host to ping all of my containers, from the containers to ping the host, from the containers to ping each other host. And then if this would be a hardware network interface card, I can also ping all of my computers on the local area network, and from the computers to back to the virtual machines, to the containers. Okay, so we will go with bridged mode. There will be net if inside of the container. There will be VATH. Okay, this ENP0S5 is named ETH in my case. And I can specify, from the Linux host OS, not set any IP address to the container, nor a gateway, nor a DNS settings, because, for instance, I can use DHCP, or I can set inside the Linux operating system, so inside Alma Linux 8 that's running inside the first container, I can set their IPv4 settings. So this is familiar to me, this I know how to set up, that's why I went with bridged mode. I tried to make host routed mode work, but it might be something really simple that I did not manage to accomplish it to work. I managed to make it work in bridged mode, so that's what we're using. Okay. We're not using virtual machines. Okay, again, bridged networking makes all of the containers available to your local area network. We're not using host routed mode. Okay, and we're using bridged mode. Okay. The first thing, inside the server, we need to... So it says that if I have more than one network interface card on the hardware machine, which I don't, then I can create my own virtual network. So I do not want this. I have just one network interface card, which is called ETH8, which is already configured as a network for PR0. Next, I do not want to have two network interface cards, two different bridges, so this page is not for me. Okay, this continues to do an entire new network for my second network interface card on the hardware machine, which I do not have. And finally, something that I can actually do. Let's list the networks available on the hardware machine. So there's two, bridged only, bridged ETH8 BR0, which we already knew, and host only VRBR0. So this is host only, and the IPv4 address is probably this one. So 10.37.130.2, but again, we're not using host only. Okay, we don't have a second network interface card. We do not want to delete it. Okay, so this was for the settings that need to be made for bridged networking on the host OS. And now what do we do inside the guest OS? So we're going to configure the container from the host OS using prlctl command line. We need a new network interface card in there because the default one is not using bridge mode. Okay, so a network interface card was created inside of the container, which has name netif1, which is in mode bridged, which has a new MAC address, which uses vert, okay, and is connected. And then we also have that VETH, where are you? So this thing, so we already had PR0, VETH was just created, this one, and netif1, which is this one. Okay. Then we can actually confirm that the network interface card was configured correctly if we want. So we go cat /etc/vz/conf, and then the GUI globally unique ID 102, and then that's the extension conf. Okay, so it says network interface, interface name netif1, what we see here, MAC address, the MAC address of the host OS, network mode priest. We can delete it if we want. So this was netif add and this is netif delete. We're not going to delete it. We could from the host OS set the IP address, but we're not going to do that because Virt Manager actually offers a DHCP server, so we're going with that. Okay, so says it has changed VETH to be DHCP yes, and now it's in state connected. It's still stopped. The container is still stopped, but we've changed the setting of VETH and of netif1. Okay, we don't want to delete an IPv4 address from netif1. We do not want to delete all of the IP addresses on netif1. We do not want to set a name server because that was given to us automatically via DHCP. We do not want to set a gateway. Again, the gateway was set via DHCP. Okay. This is if we have a second hardware network interface card on the hardware machine, which we do not. Okay, so that was it. The container is configured and ready to run. Let's start it. Okay, myCT. Says that the container has been started. Now when we're listing it, it's no longer in status stopped, it's in status running. And we can connect to it using SSH. Ctrl-Shift-T. SSH. Administrator. And we do not know the IPv4 address of the virtual machine, of the container. For that, we need to enter the container and look around. Okay, so we're inside the container because we can see this prompt. Should say Alma Linux, but does not because it's the same kernel. Okay. Let's look at the IP address, IPA, and it has received this IP address from the DHCP server, which is actually Virt Manager. Okay, so SSH administrator at Ctrl-V. Okay, so this is the machine named OpenVZ 7, and this is the machine named myCT. Okay, let's confirm the name of the Alma Linux 8 installation. And it's myCT. So we did not enter the Alma Linux container, we did not start the Alma Linux container, yet we still managed to configure hostname CTL name for the Alma Linux container from outside the container from the host OS using the syntax prlctl set, and then the name of the container, and then minus minus, I don't know, host name or name. Okay. So some configurations you can do from outside the container from the host OS using prlctl, even while the container is not running. Okay. So administrator at this IP address. It worked. So again, both the host OS and the container are in the same local area network. This is what the bridged networking is. The password was secret. Okay, let's become super user. Requires the password for the user administrator. And says administrator is not in the sudoers file. This incident will be reporting. Yes, let's exit. So administrator is inside of the container is not a member of the wheel user group. So let's add that thing. We connect as root secret. And now we can edit the user administrators to be part of the wheel group. So let's do that. Add user to wheel group. Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. Okay, this incident will be reported. We were there. So this is the thing that we want to run. Edit the groups of the user that is the last parameter, which is administrator, and make it a member of the user group wheel. What am I doing wrong? Not user add because the user is already added. User mod this thing. Okay, let's do that. Paste. So we add the user administrator to the already existing group wheel. Okay, Control D, and now we can connect to the container using SSH, using the user administrator, secret password, and now sudo should work. Yup. Okay, so I have a terminal which is called console, a GUI application, has two tabs open. One, we're inside the OpenVZ 7, which is the host OS, and once in the myct, which is the first container that I have created. Okay, now let's do something interesting inside the container. So again, I have the option from the host OS to run command lines directly inside of the container with prlctl, I don't know, execute. Exec. Okay, but I'm not doing that. I have a capable Linux operating system inside of the container, and I'm just connecting using SSH to the container. Okay, so this is how the list of processes, process tree, looks like inside the container. When inside the host OS, I use the command line prlctlexec, name of the container, and nps3. I can see that it's running SSH and that I'm connected to SSH because I can see my work in here, so su and sudo. And I can see that it has a mail server installed, an MTA, mail transfer agent, and it has a firewall and an HTTPD server. So this is interesting. Let's see what is running on the HTTP server. So copy the IPv4 address and paste. So it's the Alma Linux Apache HTTPD test page, which certifies that Apache HTTPD RPM package was installed in the Alma Linux container, and that it was also enabled using systemd. Okay, so let's change the what web page is served by the container. Let's, for instance, I don't know, install WordPress on CentOS 8. I know there was a good one from Node. Alma Linux 8. Great, even better than CentOS. Okay. So the container is running Alma Linux 8. How are we going to install WordPress on it? I need to have sudo access, which I do. I do not have a domain, a DNS domain. We're going to install PHP, Apache, MariaDB. So the stack will be LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Not LAMP. I'm not going to use Nginx. Okay. So it says that the default version of PHP in Alma Linux is PHP 7.2 and WordPress requires 7.4. I'm not sure if that's the case, but let's actually follow this tutorial. Okay, so it says add another package repository. Yum install EPEL. Okay, do I want to continue? Yes. Yes again. Okay, it says EPEL is already installed. Nothing to do. Great. Then I'm installing another RPM binary package repository, which is REMI. Is this okay? Yes. Let's see if this works. Did not complain. Yum update. I'm already super user, so writing sudo does not really do much. Sudo. Okay, GPG keys. Okay, then from Remi, I'm going to install PHP 7.4. I'm not installing PHP FPM because I'm not installing LAMP. I'm installing LAMP, L-A-M-P, not L-E-M-P. Okay, so replace a PHP 74 minus PHP with PHP 74 minus PHP minus FPM if you're using LEMP, not the case. Okay, then we need to install LAMP. We need to replace any PHP commands with PHP 74 PHP. Okay, and instead of the file php.ini, I'm using this path, so /etc/op/remi/php74/php.ini. Okay, so let's go there, install LAMP on CentOS 8. Okay, I did not finish this thing. Okay, hostname should be a DNS name that we control, which is not the case. Okay, yum update. Nothing to do. Yum install HTTPD. Correct. Nothing to do, it's already installed. No need to enable it because it's already enabled and it's already running. Okay, so it says that I should edit httpd.conf and edit keep alive and some values, which we're not going to do right now. I'm not going to set up virtual hosts. This method is really great, but I'm not going to do that. I do not know what's the root HTML directory, so let's look there. DNF, I have DNF in here, not only yum, so go DNF. In order to survive at the command line, I need MC and Emacs, no X. Install. Yes. Okay, so there's a file /etc/httpd directory. Let's go there. Okay, in there there's a directory conf, and in there there's the entry point, the configuration file for Apache HTTPD, which is /etc/httpd/conf/httpd.conf. Let's edit it and see what's in here. So it actually listens on port 80, which is default. Username, Linux username is Apache, Linux user group is Apache. and the document root is /var/www/html. Let's write this down. /var/3w/html, which we see it's configured. Okay, let's put an index.html in here and see if this is displayed correctly. So cd /var3w's/html ls, the directory is empty. Emacs index.html hello world access xc. Let's okay, and my index.html has priority over the default test page from Apache HTTPD. I will not use sites available. Okay. I have navigated to the root directory, pwd. I'm not going to use example.com or similar virtual hosts. I'm not going to symlink. I'm not going to reload. I'm not going to do SE Linux things. I don't need to own anything. I'm not doing chcon, not restarting HTTPD. Unfortunately, there's a firewall. Okay, next up, so this was, I have Linux, which is Alma Linux 8 in a container. It has correct IP addresses, so it's accessible from the exterior. It listens on port 80 and we've connected to it in here. Next up is the database, which is MySQL or MariaDB, which in this case is MariaDB. Yum install MariaDB. Yes. Let's enable it now. MySQL secure installation. So it says, in order to secure MariaDB, you will be given the option to change the root password, remove anonymous user accounts, disable root logins, etc. It is recommended that you answer yes to these options. Enter current password for the root MySQL MariaDB. There's no such thing. Set root password, yes. New password is secret. Secret. Okay. Inside container is secret. So for the user root, for the user administrator, for the MySQL root account, everything is secret. Okay. Remove anonymous users, so I'm advised to answer yes to these options. So press enter, press enter, press enter, press enter. Then I need to log in to MySQL, to MariaDB. Password secret. Okay, I'm at the MariaDB prompt. Let's run the SQL statements. create database web data, web user, secret, web data is the name of the database, web user, the user, and password is strong password, very strong. Quit. Okay, we have the HTTP server and the SQL server. I have already installed PHP. It says edit the /etc/php.ini file. So we should not edit that, we should edit this file instead. Ctrl+Shift+V. Let's see what we need to do. Ctrl+S, error reporting. So I'm not sure what the correct two values are. E-compile error, e-recoverable error, e-error, e-core error are common values for showing only errors. E-all, e-deprecated, e-strict is the default for production value. Okay, let's leave it like this. Ctrl-G, Ctrl-S, error underscore log, Ctrl-S. So there's no error log defined. Maybe I need to define it. This thing. Ctrl-K, Ctrl-XS to save. Okay, Ctrl-S, max input time. There's no such thing. There is such a thing. The default value is 60. -1 is the default value. And configured in the configuration file as 60. So, seems to be okay. Let's save these things. Ctrl-G, Ctrl-XS, Ctrl-XC. We told PHP to log to /var/log which /php which directory might not exist. So we're going to create it. We change the user and Linux user and Linux group that are owners of /var/log/php. I'm not using php-fm. I need to reload HTTPD. No need for service. Okay, let's test the LAMP stack. For that, we need to be in the HTML root directory, which we are. We'll create in there a file named like this, Emacs PHP test. Let's paste the content of the HTML file. Paste, trailing new line. And what does it do? So it uses PHP and it uses the server name, which is localhost correct, uses the username, which is web user, which is correct, and the password, which is not password, but it's secret. Ctrl-XS, XC. Okay. Refresh. We're still in index.html. So /php test does not work, needs an extension. PHP. Hello world and connected successfully. Success. So we're advised to delete this file, not to leave it around. rm php test. Yes. Okay, let's also remove the index. Okay, so the HTML root directory is empty. What's next? lemp, not doing this. php -fpm, nope. nginx, no. Create a WordPress database. Let's do that. Secret. Create database WordPress. Create user, WP user. Secret. Semicolon. Okay. Flush privileges. And quit. Install WordPress. So if you're in the HTML root directory, which I am, create in there a directory src, cd into that directory, download the latest version of the WordPress package, okay, unzip this thing so it's a tar.gz, copy, Ctrl-Shift-V, tar was already installed, okay, and now we have inside of the HTML root directory nothing, just a subdirectory named src. In there we have the WordPress tar.gz tarball and extracted in the subdirectory WordPress. Okay. Says let's rename latest tar.gz to something more meaningful. Okay. So now instead of latest.tar.gz is named WordPress today's date tar.gz. Okay. So I need to move the contents of the src WordPress directory into the root directory. So let's do that. mv WordPress /* into the parent directory of the src directory. Okay, so let's look at how things look like. So inside of the HTML root directory, there's just the WordPress extracted and an src directory. Okay. Next, it says a ton of files are owned by the user root, by nobody actually. Okay, so let's show everything. Okay, we're not using nginx, and we need to configure WordPress. Okay. Okay, let's do also this thing, which removes the default web page. Which is this one. Okay, let's do it right now. Okay, let's configure WordPress. So it asks for my language, English US. Database name, database username, database password. Okay, This is named WordPress. The username is, I do not know which one, WP user. Let's actually not run this in incognito mode. Okay, so English US, next, WordPress, WP user. The password is secret. Database host, localhost, table prefix, WP. Correct, 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 correct. Everything was correct. Run the installation. Okay. Site title. What's the name of this thing? My city. Username. Administrator. Password. Can we use secret here? Confirm use of weak password. Yes. Your email address. Okay, random email address. That doesn't make any sense. Discourage search engines from indexing. Okay. Install WordPress. Okay, so this will probably succeed and might time out or not. Okay, so we did this part, and now after the installation has finished, log in using the credentials you entered for the administrator user. So after it finishes installing, I'll need to refresh the web browser and enter my credentials. Okay, so we're nearing the end of this. What are OpenVZ containers? Things really similar to virtual machines. Reuse the same Linux kernel as the host OS, and it's very special, OpenVZ, because it requires a special host operating system. It requires a patched and not upstream Linux kernel. It requires special container templates. Okay, so it timed out. And this is my page. This is my account. I have a comment. Wow. So everything is served from the OpenVZ container. Let's just stop the container and this should be it. PRLCTL. Stop. My city. Stopping the container. Has been successfully stopped. And now inside the web browser, if I reload, it will time out. Okay. And here's my OpenVZ cheat sheet. This is where you install the host, you download the host OS ISO from. I've followed one of the screencasts. I've looked at this wiki page to find out where to download the ISO from and to get at the URL of the screencasts. The command line that I have used is PRLCTL. There are others, but this is the one that I have used. There's verbs to stop, start, create, delete, list, either virtual machines or containers, but we only looked at containers. It says Parallels 2017 and then Virtuozzo International starting from 2017. Since the host OS is similar to CentOS 7, I have hostname CTL, so I set the hostname. Then using PRLCTL, I created a container of type container, not virtual machine. I've set the hostname CTL set hostname inside of the container, even though the container is not running, and the container by default uses the Linux distribution Alma Linux 8. I have created this user with this password. I have set for this user this password. I'm using bridge networking, so PRL SRV CTL net lists the two default networks, which one is bridged, the other is host based. I'm using the bridged one, and inside of the container I go add a network interface, make that thing DHCP, then I start the container. I enter the container just to find out the IPv4 address that the DHCP server has assigned to it, IPA. It says that this is the address, IPv4 address. From that moment on, I can ignore the host OS and connect straight to the container, to the running container using SSH. So I go SSH root and then the IP address of the container. I add a user administrator to the Linux user group wheel. I can do all of the things that you can do in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. So list the list of RPMs, PS3, free, df, -h, etc. Then, since Apache HTTPD was installed by default, I can navigate in a web browser to the IP address of the container. I can install software. I was able to set up WordPress, and this is the command line to list containers. Then I have stopped the container and I saw that the IP address does not have an HTTP server anymore, so the IP address is not up and does not serve anything on port 80. So this is it. This is all about OpenVZ Virtuozzo containers. Thank you.